You've been dreaming about this moment ever since you saw 2 lines on the pregnancy test.
I'll just make sure.
Oh, don't shake it. You'll hurt the baby.
The baby's not in the stick, Bridget.
Your baby is finally here and you're ready to start your breastfeeding journey. But doubts creep in. Can I even do this? What if I don't have enough milk? Your friends, cousins, next door neighbour struggle with it, and now you're thinking, oh no, maybe I should be worried too. The problem with breastfeeding is you can't see how much milk is going into your baby's mouth, unlike bottle feeding. So how do you know if they're getting enough milk? It's like you need X-ray vision to actually see what's going on. I've come up with a super simple acronym, BREAST, B-R-E-A-S-T, to help you. By the end of the video, you'll be a pro at reading your baby's I'm full and happy cues. And if you stay to the end, I'll tell you exactly when to seek help from an expert. Before we jump in, I've popped a link in the description to my free guide, 10 ways to make breastfeeding easier. It's a great companion to this video, so be sure to grab that. Let's clear up some myths about those early days of breastfeeding. Many new mums think they should be gushing like a milk fountain from day one. Spoiler alert, that is not how it works. When your baby is first born, your breasts aren't producing milk yet. They're making something even more special called colostrum, otherwise known as liquid gold. Rich in antibodies and packed with nutrients, colostrum comes in small amounts, but that's all your newborn needs. Your baby's tummy on day one is about the size of a cherry tomato. Tiny, right? They only need about 5 to 7 mils per feed. That's about a teaspoonful. Your milk typically comes in around day 3 to 5 after birth. Trust me, you'll know when it happens. Your engorged breasts might feel like they've been pumped up like balloons. This increase in milk production matches your baby's growing appetite perfectly. By day 10, your little one's tummy might have grown to about the size of an egg, able to hold about 60 to 80 mils. It's like your body and your baby are in perfect sync. So if you're worried about not having enough milk in those first few days, remember, your body knows what you're doing. You're not meant to be producing pints from the get-go. Your baby's tummy is tiny and your colostrum is exactly what they need. All right, mums, let's talk about how to tell if your baby is getting enough milk. Like I mentioned earlier, I've got an easy way for you to remember the key signs. Just think breast. Now, I'm not just stating the obvious here. Each letter stands for a crucial sign. B is behaviour and alertness. R is regular wet and dirty nappies. E is enjoyment after feeds. A is attentive sucking and swallowing. S is softening of the breasts after feeding. And T is tracking weight gain. These 6 signs will give you the full picture of your baby's feeding success. It might seem like a lot to keep track of, but we'll go through each one in detail. By the end of the video, you'll be an expert at reading these signs, and you'll have the confidence to know your baby is getting just what they need. Let's kick off with B for behaviour and alertness. A well-fed baby will wake up for feeds, have periods of quiet alertness, and generally seem content when they're awake. If your little one is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, well, as much as a newborn can be, that's a good sign. Here's what to look out for. Your baby wakes up for feeds rather than sleeping through hunger. During awake times, they're responsive to their environment and you, and they have periods of calm alertness, especially after feeds. On the flip side, if your baby is overly sleepy, lethargic, or hard to wake for feeds, that could be a red flag that you need to get checked out. A quick tip, watch your baby's hands during a feed. They often start with clenched fists when hungry, then relax as they fill up. It's like their own little fullness meter. Every baby is different, and there are some naturally more alert than others. The key is to get to know your baby's normal patterns. If something seems off, trust your instincts and check in with your healthcare provider. Next up is R for regular wet and dirty nappies. I know, not the most glamorous topic, but trust me, you'll become a nappy expert in no time. In the first week, here's what to expect. Day 1, at least 1 wet nappy and 1 dirty nappy. By day 7, at least 6 to 7 wet nappies and at least 3 dirty nappies. Now, when I say wet, I don't mean slightly damp. We're talking, I forgot to put the lid on my water bottle in my bag kind of wet. If you're using disposables with those clever colour-changing strips, remember they're super sensitive. We're looking for properly wet, heavy nappies. As for dirty nappies, days 1 to 2 are going to be black, tarry meconium. Looks alarming, but totally normal. Days 3 to 4, the poo will be transitioning to brown, green or yellow. And day 5 onwards, the chicken korma special. Soft, seedy, mustard yellow. Yes, I said chicken korma. You'll know it when you see it. Pro tip, tear open the front of the nappy to check the colour of the urine. Let's just open up the nappy from the inside. We're aiming for clear to pale yellow colour. Now, don't panic if you're not seeing massive amounts. Breast milk is efficiently used by your baby, so poos might only be about the size of a £2 coin or 2 tablespoons, but liquidy. Remember, after the first month, some babies might only poo once every 1 to 10 days. As long as it's soft when it comes out and they're producing 6 to 8 heavy wet nappies every 24 hours and your baby is content and feeding well, that's okay. If you spot any green, frothy or mucousy poos, or if the colour isn't progressing as I've described, have a chat with your healthcare provider or breastfeeding specialist. Tracking nappies might seem a bit odd at first, but it's a brilliant way to gauge if your baby is getting enough milk. Next up is E for enjoyment after feeds. This is all about how content your baby seems once they've had their fill. A well-fed baby is usually a happy baby. After a good feed, your little one should seem satisfied and relaxed. Think of it as their version of that blissed out feeling you get after a delicious meal. Here's what to look for. Your baby comes off the breast on their own, looking milk drunk and content. They might fall asleep at the breast or shortly after feeding. If awake, they're calm and settled, not immediately rooting for more. You may be able to see some milk still in their mouths when they come off the breast. Remember those clenched fists we talked about earlier? After a good feed, you should see those little hands relax. It's like they're giving you a little tiny thumbs up. Now, if your baby is constantly fussy, crying, or wanting to feed again very quickly after most feeds, it might be a sign they're not getting quite enough. But don't panic. Some babies just like to cluster feed, especially in the evenings around 3 to 4 months old. Often they're trying to tell your body to increase the milk supply because they're going through a growth spurt. It's totally normal and expected. A quick tip, learn your baby's I'm full cues. Some babies turn their head away, while others might push away with their hands. It's like they're saying, thanks mum, I'm stuffed. Some babies are naturally more chilled out, while others are a bit more, let's say, vocal about their needs. The key is to get to know your baby's patterns and what's normal for them. Now we're on to A, for attentive suckling and swallowing. Effective feeding isn't just about your baby latching on and going to town. There's actually a rhythm to it. Here's what to look and listen for. Quick sucks at first. These stimulate your letdown reflex. Usually within 1 to 2 minutes, you'll feel a tingly sensation as your milk starts to flow. Deeper, slower sucks follow. This is when your baby's really swallowing. You should see a pattern of suck, swallow, breathe. Try to listen for the swallowing as well. In the early days, you might hear it every 3 to 5 sucks. As your milk supply increases, you might hear it with every suck. Watch your baby's jaw. You should see it drop slightly with each swallow, almost like a little chin wobble. Don't worry if you can't hear the swallows at first. It can take a bit of practice. You can also look for movement in your baby's throat or at the base of their ears. It's subtle, but it's there. If your baby's just sucking continuously without pausing, they might not be getting much milk. Likewise, if feeds are taking longer than 40 minutes, or if you're rarely hearing swallows, it might be worth checking your baby's latch or consulting with a breastfeeding specialist. If you're having trouble with getting a good latch, check out my detailed video on perfecting your baby's latch. I've added a card right here for you. Remember, every baby has their own feeding style. Some are efficiency experts, while others prefer to take their time and enjoy the experience. Right, let's talk about S for softening of breasts after feeding. This one's all about how your breasts feel before and after a feed. Around day 3 or 4 after birth, you might wake up feeling like someone's replaced your breast with rocks. Don't panic. This is your milk coming in. It's completely normal. It's what we mentioned earlier. This is what to look for. Before a feed, your breast should feel full, firm, and even a bit heavy. After a good feed, they should feel noticeably softer and lighter. It's like the difference between a full balloon and a slightly deflated one. This change is a great indicator that your baby's actually drinking milk and not just using you as a human dummy. A few things to keep in mind. In the first couple of days, you might not notice a change. That's because, like we said earlier, you're producing colostrum, which comes in much smaller amounts. Once your milk comes in properly, the difference should be obvious. Some mums feel a tingling or letdown sensation when their milk starts flowing. If you didn't feel this, don't worry, not everyone does. Here's a tip. If one breast feels softer than the other after a feed, start the next feed on the firmer side. And don't be surprised if you feel your milk letting down in the other breast while feeding. You might want to keep a muslin cloth handy to catch any spills. Or pop a hacker pump on there to catch and store for later. I love these pumps. If you're concerned about your milk supply, don't worry. I've got a whole video dedicated to boosting your milk supply. Look for the card popping up now. As long as your breasts feel less full after feeding and you're seeing other signs that your baby is getting enough milk, you're on the right track. Last but not least, we've got T for tracking weight gain. Now, don't go strapping your baby to a scale after every feed. We're looking at the bigger picture here. First things first, it's completely normal for newborns to lose some weight in the first few days. We're talking about 7 to 10% of their birth weight. This is just their body adjusting to life outside the womb. Here's what to expect. By day 4, your baby should stop losing weight. By 2 weeks old, they should be back to their birth weight. After that, aim for a gain of about 150 to 250 grams a week for the first few months. Now, here's the important bit. Weight gain is just one piece of the puzzle. If your baby is gaining weight slower than expected, but they're alert, content, and filling nappies like a champion, don't stress. Weight gain isn't always steady. Your baby might have growth spurts when they pack on the grams, then slow down for a bit. Breastfed babies often gain weight differently from formula-fed babies. They might gain quickly in the first few months, then slow down. If you're worried, track weight over a few weeks rather than day to day. It's like watching your plants grow. You won't see much change overnight, but give it a few weeks and suddenly they shot up. Right, let's discuss when you might need to reach out for some extra support. Please remember, asking for help doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're being a fantastic, proactive mum. Here are some signs that it might be time to chat with a lactation consultant or your healthcare provider. Your baby isn't back to birth weight by 2 weeks old or is consistently losing weight after the first few days. Your little one is having fewer wet nappies or dirty nappies than we talked about earlier. If you're changing fewer than 6 wet nappies a day after the first week, that's a red flag. Your baby seems constantly hungry, fussy, or unsatisfied after most feeds. Feeding is painful for you beyond the initial latch, or you have cracked or bleeding nipples. Your breasts don't feel full before feeds or softer afterwards, even after your milk has come in. Your baby is very sleepy and you're struggling to wake them for feeds. You notice green, frothy, or mucousy poos constantly. You're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or just not sure if things are going right. Don't wait until small issues become big problems. Most breastfeeding challenges can be sorted pretty quickly with the right support. Your midwife, health visitor, GP, or lactation consultant can be fantastic resources. There are various reasons why you might experience a low milk supply. I've covered this topic in depth in another video, and you'll see a card appear with the link. Remember the BREAST acronym: behaviour, regular nappies, enjoyment after feeds, attentive suckling, softening of breasts, and tracking weight gain. These are your go-to signs that your baby is getting enough milk. But here's the most important thing I want you to take away. Trust your instincts. You know your baby better than anyone else. If something doesn't feel right, don't hesitate to reach out for help. Remember, I've got that free resource, 10 ways to make breastfeeding easier, in the description below. It's packed with more tips to help you on your journey.